When I lost my job, my in-laws held a family meeting where my mother-in-law said, "You're dead weight. Either you start contributing or you're out." My brother-in-law added, "She's always been a burden, we just never said it out loud." I nodded and said, "Thanks for finally being honest." Last week, I sent them all a letter that's about to burn down everything they built on my back. I used to believe family meant something. I used to think being loyal, patient, and supportive was what made you valuable in people's lives. But now I know better. Now I know what people really think when you're down. I'm Claire, 38, from Spokane, Washington. I've been married to Dan for 12 years. We met right after college. I was working 2 jobs and finishing my degree. Dan was already climbing the ladder at his father's company, Weller Construction, a family-owned operation that was more nepotism than skill. When we got married, I gave everything to that family. I gave up a career in nonprofit logistics to support Dan while he took on more and more responsibility at the company. His mom, Karen, yeah, real name, real stereotype, ran the books. His dad, Frank, was semi-retired but still barking orders when it suited him. His younger brother, Matt, was learning the ropes, which mostly meant showing up late and still getting paid. Meanwhile, I did everything else. When Dan and I had our daughter, Ivy, I became a stay-at-home mom. That wasn't the plan, but daycare costs were insane, and Dan said it made more sense for me to stay home just for a few years. Those years became almost a decade. I raised Ivy. I helped organize the office when Karen's assistant quit. I drove Matt's wife to prenatal appointments when he was too busy. I managed holiday dinners, baby showers, and birthday parties. I ran errands for Karen when she got foot surgery. I even ghostwrote Dan's company blog during COVID because no one else in that family could string 2 coherent paragraphs together. I did all of it. For free. For loyalty. Then I lost my remote job. It was just part-time grant writing, but it gave me a little independence. And when the nonprofit shut down suddenly, I told Dan that night over dinner. I didn't expect a parade. But I didn't expect what came next. A few days later, Dan told me his mom wanted to have a family meeting. I should have known better. It was a Saturday afternoon. We were at their big colonial house in South Hill. Dan, me, his parents, Matt, and Matt's wife Rachel. They all sat around the dining table like it was a boardroom. Karen opened with, "We're concerned, Claire." "Concerned?" I asked. She folded her hands, all polite, like she was about to fire a nanny. "You're not working. And we think it's time you started contributing, or," she glanced at Dan. Dan didn't say anything. "You're dead weight," Karen finished. I felt my chest go tight. "Excuse me?" Matt leaned forward, smirking. "She's always been a burden, we just never said it out loud." I looked at Dan, again. Nothing. Rachel kept her eyes on her phone. Frank wasn't there, probably golfing. I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking. "Thanks for finally being honest." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just nodded. Took Ivy's coat, left their house, and drove home in silence. That night, Dan tried to smooth things over. Said they meant well. Said they were just worried about our finances. I asked him if he believed what they said. He didn't answer. So I started planning. Because if I was dead weight, then they'd better figure out how to carry themselves without me. And if I was a burden, then it was time they learned exactly how much they'd leaned on me all these years, and what happened when I stopped holding them up. I kept quiet for 6 months. I took a job at a local accounting firm, entry-level admin work, nothing glamorous. But it got me out of the house. Gave me space to think. Every lunch break, I documented everything. All the help I gave Weller Construction. All the blog posts I wrote. All the events I organized. I printed emails, texts, even Dropbox files Karen had sent me with company records she couldn't make sense of. They were sloppy. I wasn't. Turns out, Karen had been cutting corners with payroll. She'd been listing Matt's hours under consulting to hide the fact that he barely worked. She was also listing me, under a fake admin name, to balance the books, despite never paying me. That was tax fraud. I knew someone who used to work at the state labor board. I asked a few hypothetical questions. Then I hired a lawyer. Quietly. Paid for with my own money. I didn't tell Dan. Not yet. The last straw came when I found out Dan was using our daughter's college fund. The one I'd set up and managed, to buy a second boat with Matt. A second boat. That week, I moved half the money into a separate account under my name. The rest? I left it. Because I wanted them to burn with it. And last week, I sent the letters. One to the IRS. One to the State Labor Board. One to a journalist friend I'd met back in my nonprofit days who loved stories about nepotism and corruption in small business. And one to Karen. Inside hers was a copy of every email, every fake document, every piece of help I'd given over the years. Along with a single note, if I'm dead weight, let's see how you do without me. The fallout hasn't fully hit yet. But I've seen the tremors. Karen tried calling me 13 times in one night. I blocked her. Matt texted Dan something like, "What the hell is Claire doing?" Dan finally confronted me. "You can't just go after my family," he said. "I'm not," I replied. "I'm just stopping myself from being used." We haven't spoken since. Ivy's with me. I've already contacted a divorce attorney. And the audit process has started. This isn't the end. Not yet. But I promise you, they'll never forget what happens when the person they called a burden stops carrying their entire damn world on her back. The first time I knew it had started working was when I saw the for sale sign go up outside the Weller construction office on 29th Avenue. That office used to be their pride. Big blue sign, 2-story brick, shiny white company trucks out front. I used to help decorate the inside during the holidays. Karen even had a little plaque on her desk that said Boss Lady. But now, it was going under. I didn't know how deep the financial hole was until Rachel, Matt's wife, texted me out of the blue. "Claire, I know things are messy. But can we talk?" I had no idea about the fake payroll stuff. "I'm so sorry." I ignored her at first. I didn't trust a word from anyone in that family. But 2 days later, she showed up at my office. I work on the 4th floor of a small building downtown, and she waited in the lobby for over an hour. I finally let her up. Rachel looked wrecked. Her eyes were swollen, and she held a folder in her hands. "I didn't know," she said. "But now I do." The folder held Karen's handwritten ledger. I recognized the notebook. And inside were notes about fake time cards, tax write-offs that made no sense, and payments to a consultant listed only as CG. That was me. "I thought Karen was just bad at math," Rachel said. "But she was using you." For years. Rachel had started going through everything when the IRS called Matt asking for backup documentation on payroll. Matt panicked and blamed Karen. Karen blamed clerical errors. Frank just yelled at everyone. I took the folder, scanned it, and gave her back the original. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. Rachel shook her head. "I'm not. I'm helping myself. I've got 2 kids and no backup plan. And if Matt goes down, I go down too." She paused. "But I also think what they did to you was disgusting." That was the first time I'd heard anyone in that family acknowledge it. Meanwhile, Dan was unraveling. We were still under the same roof, temporarily, but it was tense. Ivy picked up on it. She started asking if we were getting divorced. I didn't lie. "Yes, baby. We are. But you'll be okay. I promise." Dan accused me of destroying his life. "You're killing my business." "It's not your business," I told him. "It never was. You just married into it." That stung. I could see it on his face. But I didn't care. He begged me to withdraw the complaint to the state. Said they'd work it out internally. I told him it was already too late. The IRS froze their business account 3 days later. I didn't even know it had happened until Rachel texted again, "Everything's frozen." They're freaking out. Karen says you ruined everything. Good. But I wasn't done. While Dan spiraled, I dug deeper. I'd been smart over the years, kept copies of everything I ever worked on. Old hard drives. Flash drives in kitchen drawers. Even a binder in the attic from when I helped them land a federal development grant during COVID. They had used my research and writing. My pitch. My contacts. And they pocketed the money. Said it went toward community projects. It didn't. I turned that over to my attorney. Along with every receipt, every timestamped email, every document I'd created. He said the fraud could trigger federal charges if the misuse of funds was proven. I wasn't surprised. But Dan was. You kept receipts? He screamed one night after reading through some emails I'd printed. You bet I did, I said. Because even back then, I knew your family couldn't be trusted. He moved out a week later. Frank finally called me. First time in over 2 years. You made your point, he growled. Drop it. We'll settle. We'll pay you. I told him I didn't want their money. I wanted them exposed. Claire, you'll tear this family apart. You did that yourselves. Ivy was confused. Hurt. She missed her dad. I didn't keep her from him, but their visits became shorter. Quieter. She told me once, Daddy doesn't laugh anymore. No one in that family was laughing. Karen's boss lady desk? Gone. Hauled off in a moving truck after the building was seized. Matt started working nights at a warehouse out in Airway Heights. Dan kept trying to tell people I was unstable, that I'd lost it after losing my job. But Spokane's not a big town. People talk. And once the local paper ran the story. Family business under IRS scrutiny for payroll fraud and misuse of COVID relief funds, the narrative flipped. Suddenly, I was the one people reached out to. Former employees. Vendors who never got paid. Even an ex-assistant of Karen's who said she once quit mid-shift because Karen threw a coffee mug at her head. The press kept calling. I didn't give interviews. I didn't need to. The documents spoke for themselves. One night, I got a call from Dan's uncle, Jim, Frank's estranged brother. I just want to say, he said, voice low and serious, that I always knew you were the only one holding that family together. I hope you bury them. I didn't say anything. I just hung up and stared out the window for a long time. Rachel ended up filing for separation. Said Matt turned cold, angry. Accused her of betraying the family. She told me she was scared. I gave her the number of my lawyer. Ivy's therapist said she's adjusting better than expected. She's drawing more. Talking more. Asked me if I'd take her to see the coast this summer. I said yes. I still have more moves to make. There's one more secret they don't know I know, something that could ruin Dan for good, both personally and professionally. But I'm not ready to use it. Not yet. Because timing is everything. And sometimes, the final match has to be lit after everything else is soaked in gasoline. The secret I was holding? It started 2 years ago, right before I lost my remote job. I didn't realize what it was at the time. Just an offhand comment from Dan while he was tipsy, scrolling through his phone late at night in bed. He mumbled something about Shelby being a pain in the ass. I thought it was a client. He said she was someone he worked with on that grant thing and brushed it off. But a few weeks ago, as I was organizing Ivy's school files, I found one of Dan's old work binders. I wasn't even snooping. It had just fallen behind a shelf. Tucked inside was a manila folder labeled Shelby G. Inside were emails. Dozens. And they weren't work-related. Shelby was 26. She worked as a project coordinator during the COVID grant years. According to the emails, she and Dan had been seeing each other. Not a one-night thing. An actual affair that lasted at least 9 months. There were photos. Not explicit. But enough. Dan smiling with her at some bar downtown. A selfie of him on a boat, our boat. With Ivy's pink floaty in the background. The emails were worse. I can't wait until we don't have to sneak around. She's so boring. Always tired. You're different. You make me feel alive. One of them was dated 2 days after our anniversary. He'd been sleeping next to me while planning a future with someone else. I didn't say a word. Not yet. Because now I had more than just the financial fraud. Now I had the personal betrayal. And I wasn't going to waste it. First, I made copies. Digital and physical. Then I reached out to Shelby. Found her on LinkedIn. She was working in Seattle now. She didn't respond to my first message. But she read it. And then she blocked me. So I sent a letter instead. Short and cold. Shelby, I have all the emails and photos. I'm not coming after you. But if you want to get ahead of this, now's your chance. Claire, she called me 2 days later. Crying. I didn't know he was still married, she said. He told me you two were separated. He said you slept in different rooms. I didn't tell her how many times we'd slept together during the same months he was lying to her. I didn't see the point. I don't care about your guilt, I said. I care about leverage. She was quiet. I asked her to send me every message he ever sent. And she did. Hundreds. Some of them clearly written from his office computer. Others from his Weller Construction email account. That sealed it. He hadn't just cheated on me. He'd used company time and resources to do it. That meant misconduct. Grounds for removal. Even if the company was sinking, the final nail had to come from inside. And I had what I needed to do it. But the twist came when I visited the courthouse to file more documents for my divorce. I was walking out of the building when I spotted Karen, standing outside, chain-smoking, pacing like a wild animal. She hadn't seen me. Then I saw who she was talking to, a lawyer. And not just any lawyer. Dan's lawyer. They were planning to sue me. Not just for defamation, but for business sabotage. Karen was arguing that I had been the one forging documents. That I'd altered her payroll records to make them look guilty. That I'd hacked her files. She was trying to frame me. I stood behind a pillar and recorded the whole thing. She told the lawyer, Claire's always had a vindictive streak. She's not stable. We can spin this. Say she was trying to destroy Dan after he tried to leave her. My hands were shaking, but I kept filming. The woman who used to call me sweetie while handing me homemade cookies was now planning to paint me as a mentally unstable criminal. It hit me hard. Harder than the cheating. Harder than the betrayal. Because this was war now. Real war. I sent the video to my lawyer that night. And he told me something that chilled me. If they're trying to flip the narrative, it means they know they're losing. But it also means they're desperate. Be careful, Claire. Desperate people do reckless things. The next morning, I found a long scratch across my car door. Deep. Deliberate. Ivy's booster seat had been tossed into the passenger seat. Someone had broken into my car. Nothing stolen. Just messed with. A message. I didn't have proof it was them. But I didn't need it. I changed my locks. Put up cameras. Got a protection order in motion. Rachel called again. She said Karen had stopped talking to her after she moved out. She's spiraling, Rachel whispered. She's threatening to sue everyone. Matt, too. She blames us all for letting you turn. I wanted to laugh. Turn? Like I hadn't been loyal for over a decade? I told Rachel, you picked the wrong side too many times. You don't get to act surprised. She asked if I'd testify on her behalf in the separation hearing. I said maybe. Because if Karen was trying to drag me down, I was going to take every single secret they'd ever hidden and put it on the record. Publicly. In court. Ivy was my priority. I made sure she never saw the fear, never heard the phone calls. I kept her world as steady as I could. But inside, I was boiling. They thought they could erase me. Discredit me. Intimidate me. They forgot I built their damn empire behind the scenes. And now I was tearing it down brick by brick. And they had no idea what I was still holding back. It didn't happen all at once. It happened the way rot works, quietly, underneath, until one day the whole thing collapses and no one can pretend it's solid anymore. 3 weeks after I recorded Karen trying to frame me, her world finally snapped. The IRS launched a formal criminal investigation. The federal grant misuse wasn't just a red flag, it was a screaming siren. My attorney had forwarded them everything. Shelby's emails, the grant proposals I had ghostwritten, the financial files Karen had edited after the fact. They found discrepancies. Missing receipts. Dates that didn't add up. Karen was served at home. Matt lost his job at the warehouse after showing up drunk on a Tuesday. Rachel filed for full custody. She said he'd started yelling in front of the kids. Smashing things. You were right, she texted. He was always rotten. I just thought he'd grow up. I thought being a dad would change him. Dan? Dan lost everything. The construction company folded. Public trust was gone, vendors pulled out, and the audit uncovered that he'd signed off on fake consulting fees, some tied to me, some tied to Shelby. He tried to pin it on Karen. She tried to pin it on him. They turned on each other fast. Karen told the investigators that Claire always handled the emails. She was the one sending those grant applications. Dan, under pressure, turned around and admitted Karen was manipulating all of us. I didn't even know some of those reports were fake. It was all recorded. I wasn't even there. I was busy finalizing the divorce. It was quiet. No drama in the courtroom. Ivy sat in the hallway with her tablet, waiting while I signed the papers that ended a 12-year marriage. Dan didn't say a word to me when we walked past each other. Just looked at the floor. But when I stepped outside, he followed me into the parking lot. He looked hollow. Worn out. Claire, he said, can we talk? Just for a second. I didn't want to. But I let him. I didn't know what she was doing, he said. I was stupid, but I wasn't trying to hurt you. You cheated. You lied. You stood by while they called me a burden, I said. That's not stupid. That's who you are. Ivy's scared of me, he said, his voice cracking. She barely talks to me. You're the one who broke that, not me. He nodded. I know. I don't sleep anymore. I see you everywhere. I keep thinking about that night, at the table, when they said those things. And I didn't stop them. That's when you lost me, I said. He tried to reach for my hand. I stepped back. And that was it. Dan ended up moving back in with Frank, who had taken a second mortgage on his house trying to save the company. It didn't work. The house was listed for sale a month later. I heard Frank had a mild stroke and wasn't driving anymore. Karen? She pled out to avoid prison time, but she still got 5 years of probation, heavy fines, and a permanent ban from running or working for any federally funded business. She also had to make a public statement. I watched the video online. She stood at a podium outside the courthouse, reading from a paper. I take full responsibility for the financial mismanagement and mistakes made under my leadership at Weller Construction. She looked like a ghost. No smug smile. No pearls. No boss lady attitude. After the statement, she tried to walk off, but a reporter asked, "What do you say to the people who trusted you? Including your own daughter-in-law?" Karen didn't answer. She just kept walking. Ivy asked me once if we'd ever visit Grandma Karen again. No, I said. She made choices that hurt a lot of people. But I still remember her hugs, Ivy whispered. And that's the part that stings the most. Because my daughter still remembers the version of Karen that smiled and brought cookies. Not the woman who tried to ruin her mom's life behind the scenes. But that's how betrayal works. It hides behind hugs. Ivy and I moved to a new place, just outside Spokane, near the lake. It's quiet. Peaceful. I planted flowers. Got a dog. She named him Lucky. I started a small grant consulting business. On my own terms. My own clients. I work while Ivy's at school. I meet deadlines without anyone else stealing credit. Some days, I wake up still tense, like I'm waiting for the next blow to land. Like someone's going to tell me I imagined the whole thing. But then I see the court rulings. The legal filings. The closed office downtown. The silence on Dan's end. And I know it was real. People ask me sometimes, do you regret it? Burning it all down? And I tell them the truth. I regret staying as long as I did. I regret carrying people who never once offered to lift me up. I regret trusting that loyalty alone made me worth something. But burning it all down? No. I don't regret that at all. They tried to bury me. But they forgot, I was the one who built the foundation they stood on. And now they're the ones sinking in the ashes of everything they took for granted.